Hello my friends, it's the 6th of March 2015, Mr. Max Bliss in the southwest of France. On this frosty morning there are chemtrails being deployed, chemically induced or some other way induced ionised condensation trails. Now interestingly enough, we're seeing a lot of these this morning, which is why I'm making these films. They seem to be stopping over us. They seem to be deployed and breaking up over us. Now, I believe... oh look, there's a plane there with no trail. Bloody hell. Must be a low one, eh? Interesting. But we have planes there. Leaving trails directly from the engines. No gap. There is no question whatsoever that contrails form clouds, and clouds play a critical role in regulating the climate. There is no question about that. That's not up for debate. We know for a fact. Look how many planes there are, for God's sake. So that one's a small plane there with just a short trail. There's another plane above it. And there's another plane there. Let's get it in focus. And of course there's that plane there with no trail whatsoever, which is unusual to be going in that direction, supposedly low enough. It could be going to Bordeaux, but that's very unusual indeed for our area. Yet these ones are leaving trails, many of them. This is part of a covert weather modification program, and they can investigate this by researching inadvertent weather modification, i.e. how can we control the weather as a byproduct of something that's already happening. See the expansion there? Now interestingly, I found out that ice crystals themselves that may be formed by these contrails, and they're very, very high up, and these will make cirrus clouds, contrail cirrus clouds. Those ice crystals will eventually fall, and they will seed clouds at a lower altitude. Now, whether this is an understood process and encouraged and induced, or whether this is inadvertent, it is certainly going to be affecting clouds, precipitation and weather and climate. And since planes are flying all over the world, and we're seeing these contrails all over the world, and we know that clouds will form from these contrails, and that those ice crystals which are formed in the clouds will fall and seed clouds at different altitudes below, this is a form of weather modification. And I believe that they understand the processes and are doing this deliberately. And I think there's an awful lot of evidence to suggest how this could be done. It could be done by ionizing from the pylon to make little ice crystals. Look at a patent from Rolls-Royce called moisture dispersion. And of course, ice crystals that are seeded by these ionization methods can be regulated depending on the various different energy used and frequencies. There are different methods of using lasers to stimulate nanoparticles that may be generated in the exhaust after combustion, or in nanoparticles that are added to the fuel or from a fuel additive. They could even simply be just additives in the fuel itself, or some of the exotic additives added to the fuel. There are hundreds of additives that may be responsible. We cannot know for sure. I believe there are many different ways of doing it, and they've been experimenting for a long time. Certainly since the Second World War. And before that, of course. But what we can tell is a linear increase in cloud cover. There is a massive increase in the contrails, and they certainly weren't this visible underneath the busiest air corridors in the world, servicing the busiest airports in the world over the years. This is just from the 90s onwards, virtually. Of course, there have been development. It's been development since before the Second World War, so there are lots of examples. This is a long-term program, my friends. And they are learning to control the weather and climate. They're creating extremes of weather to be blamed on this theory of anthropogenic global warming, which is the catalyst of fear being used by the globalists to create a one world government system, because they're saying this global threat requires global changes, globalization, embracing sustainable development and Agenda 21 to slave the planet. This is their way to get one world government and get the people to accept it, the new world order, because the people are supposed to be convinced about this long-term agenda to say that there's a man is the enemy of the planet, basically. They've been developing this since the 60s. The concept that man will become the enemy of the planet, and we all need to change the way we live in order to save the planet. This is the whole myth about overpopulation and about food shortages and the toxic effects of the industrialists on the planet. That's all being blamed on the everyday people. And we're supposed to be okay with this and have had it ingrained into our psyche so that we'll accept all the changes that these governments want to bring about, these various Earth summits and climate issues, and basically bring about a one world government system of tyranny, a socialist totalitarian system where we'll all lose everything we've got, so that we'll just become part of the hive mind. And this is the goal. This is what climate engineering will bring about. This is the whole agenda, is to take over the world, and for the people to accept that, to acquiesce, because they've had decades of propaganda and indoctrination to believe ultimately that man is the enemy of the planet. Well, there's only a small group of the dominant men that are really a threat to this planet, and that is the oligarchy, the obscenely rich elites. That some of them will attend the Bilderberg Group and be members of the Trilateral Commission and Council on Foreign Relations and the Royal Institute on International Affairs and many other foundation groups and think tank organisations like RAND organisation and everything else. Lots of spraying this morning. What's the agenda today? What's the weather extreme they're going to create, or changes in the weather they're trying to modify? time to wake up, my friends. They're approaching the time when they hope to be able to get their United Nations climate treaty without obstruction. But we have to realise that their taming of our climate is not as easy as they think. They can just tip the balance every now and again. Force multiply, as they say on their 1996 symposium about owning the weather 2025. They can just tip the balance here and there. They can't master it. They can't totally control it. And we're not having the global warming they're talking about. There's been countless times with the various ClimateGate scandals where they are skewing the data, homogenising the data, misrepresenting the data. Whether it's NASA, NOAA, or the UK Climate Research Centre, they are lying to us, and they're fooling a lot of their own scientists, because scientists are honestly using the data, but the data is not accurate. And some of the scientists between themselves with the ClimateGate scandal realised that they were going to have difficulties in hiding the fact that we are not warming. Global warming has paused now. It stopped back in 1998. In fact, if you look at that data, up until that point, we are actually in a cooling period now. But they're pushing ahead with their climate scandal, global warming, renamed it mostly now to climate change. And it's now going to be renamed, by the way, to global change. Because climate changes all the time. No argument there. No worries either, because we all know it. Time to wake up, my friends. They are desperate to get their new world order in place. But it's fragile. There's nothing guaranteed. And the way we can stop this, my friends, is by researching verifiable facts and sharing that information and changing our paradigm. Stop being distracted by television and gossip and media and all these different fear agendas that they generate, whether it's the economy collapsing or various third world war agendas and everything else, all designed to frighten everyone to death and to stop focusing on the facts that matter, on the big agendas to get the new world order, to get this one world government system in place. The United Nations post-2015 agenda will focus on poverty, on women's rights, on the climate, on food, sustainable food, using the bioeconomy, which means that genetically modified food will become the dominant food supply, because they're saying with our supposed overpopulation problem, they need to use genetically modified food, which is supposedly more productive. However, if you have a look at infertility rates, the United Nations statistics for all the nations around the world, you will find that over 2/3 of the world's nations and the bulk of the population of the world, the population fertility rates is less than 2.1. That means that the population cannot be maintained. It's actually in decline. And most Western nations, their populations are artificially kept high by mass immigration to maintain that illusion that we're overpopulated. And they deliberately design cities to be congested. It's part of the plan. Time to wake up, my friends. We are being lied to, and a lot of people are being lied to in the establishment. They're compartmentalised. They're just as tricked as everyone else, and that's how it seems authentic. You know, there's a lot of people in the environmental movement that truly care about our planet, but they're being duped just like everyone else. A very small number of people really know what's going on. So I urge everybody to carry on doing your research and reach as many people as possible. Maybe we can get some of these climate scientists and these eco people that was set up by the oligarchy back in the 60s for the green agenda. Maybe we can get them to wake up too and join us. Take care, my friends. Bye for now.